Hey, God bless your family. Welcome to Pastor Jerone TV. I'm your host, Pastor Jerone, and welcome to another installment on Wednesday's Word, where I'm just seeking to give you just a small injection. Sometimes all it takes is just a small little nudge from the Spirit of God, and that's enough to encourage people's faith, to push them through, and to help them get out and witness to a lost world, or just encourage your prayer life, or just encourage your faith life, or studying that Word of God, so that you can be transformed by that Word. I don't know about you, but lately, as we look at these last and evil days unfold, my mind has been looking at heaven, and I've been looking in the Word, trying to find glimpses of what heaven looks like, just little peeks, if I can, or if you will, at what heaven would be like. But really, just to be honest with you, that's all the Bible literally offers us, is just small little windows, or little just snapshots of what heaven looks like. And I believe that there's a purpose for that. There's a reason for that. Because if everybody knew what heaven looked like and what it was like and how wonderful it was, there would probably be mass suicides around the world of people trying to hurry up and get there. So I don't believe God wanted us to do it that way. God wants us to access heaven by faith, just like accessing Him by faith, just like having salvation through faith or getting healing through faith. We got to believe God at what He said and trust Him at it. Jesus said that I'm going away and I'm preparing a place for you, that where I am, you will be there also. And those of us who love Him will just accept the fact that He's preparing a wonderful place for you and I. And we don't have to have every exact detail, but sometimes it's just good to know something. And just today I want to share one of the laws about heaven that is for something that is forbidden in heaven, a rule that you and I will not be able to break in heaven. And of course, it's not going to be sin there. It's going to be a wonderful place where we can all just worship God and be in the beauty of His light and in His holiness. But there is a law in heaven that you and I cannot weep. Why is weeping forbidden in heaven? That's my thought for today. Why is weeping forbidden in heaven? And we'll see this in Revelation chapter 5, verse 1 through 5. Revelation chapter 5, verses 1 through 5. And we'll share some information after this. Okay, let's read Revelation chapter 5, verse 1 through 5. And I saw in the right hand of him that sat on the throne a book written within and on the backside, saying, sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, who is worthy to open the book and to loose the seals thereof? And no man in heaven, nor in earth, nor under the earth, that's in hell, was able to open the book, neither to look therein. And John said, and I wept much, because no man was found worthy to open and to read the book, neither to look therein. And one of the elders said unto me, weep not. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Juda, the Root of David, hath prevailed to open the book and to loose the 7 seals thereof. Why is there no weeping in heaven? John is usually escorted by one of the angels, and he's talking with the angel, and the angel gives him revelation and understanding on what's going on. But in this particular verse, one of the elders, one of the 24 elders, comes to him and lets him know, see to it that you do not weep. Okay. Now this 24, this elder was one of the 24. The 24, which was the 12 tribes of Israel, the leaders of the 12 tribes of Israel, and the leaders of the 12 disciples. So this is why Jesus was in such intense prayer the night before He selected His 12 disciples, because these were going to be the 24, or they were going to be included of the 24 elders who had the crowns on, that laid their crown before God night and day, saying dominion and power and holiness to God forever and ever and ever. And so God handpicked the 12 that He wanted around His throne. But one of that 24 came to John and says, listen, make sure you don't weep in heaven. Now, me, knowing the Bible and reading the Bible, what of which one of the disciples or which of the 12 patriarchs was outgoing and vocal to do that? I believe it was Peter. I believe Peter went up and told John, he says, look, make sure you don't cry in heaven. He said, because there's a law that happened. Something took place in the earth that wiped away all the tears from every believer throughout every generation. And when we get to heaven, my brothers and sisters, it's only going to be joy. It's only going to be rejoicing. It's only going to be the beauty of holiness and the worship of God and his Son and the Lamb forever and ever. Not going to be any weeping there. That's against the law in heaven. So he says, see to it that you don't do that. Well, I want to show you that there was a transfer in the earth of weeping to joy. And I'm going to show you that real quick in John chapter 11, verse 33. Make a note of it. John chapter 11, verse 33. And two words are found in that verse. Jesus wept. So powerful was that event. So awesome was that event that no other words come on that verse except for two words in that verse saying that Jesus wept. The people of God, because we belong to God, and because the world is in such great opposition to God, and because we are associated with him, and because we love him, and because his love is on us, you and I will suffer greater persecution, greater attacks, greater grief and sorrow than most people in the world. Jesus said it. He says, if I were of the world loves its own. He says, but I'm not of the world, so they hate me. And he says they're going to hate you too. And so you and I are going to go through some unusual times in this earth where we're going to go through some weeping, where we're going to go through some grief, and we're going to go through sorrow because sin is in the world. And because sin is here, you and I go through grief and go through sorrow, and we go through pain, and we go through loss, and we suffer tears sometimes. But when we get to heaven, that's not going to be the case. That God himself is going to take personal ambition and take it upon himself to personally wipe away the tears from every believer. Every believer are going to have their tears wiped away by God himself. Why? Because God looked at his Son and said, this is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased. And because he was so well pleased with him, the day that his Son stood at the grave of Lazarus and wept, that was the moment that a prophetic transfer took place. And yes, we don't see the effects of it now because you and I are still in the earth and we're going through our time of weeping, but all of this stuff is going to be accounted for, trust me. Every tear is being accounted for. Every prayer is being accounted for. Every word is being accounted for. And God's going to use these words and tears and prayers to judge our enemies. So Jesus stood at the grave of Lazarus, and when he stood at the grave of Lazarus, that day he wept, being grieved because his friend Lazarus died. But in that moment, things under the earth, which is hell, and things in heaven begin to experience a transfer and a change. Because those in Psalms 126 and 5, those that sow in tears are going to reap in joy. Now we're sowing in tears in this earth, but you and I are going to have joy forever in heaven, that we'll never ever cry again. You and I will never ever experience grief or sorrow again ever. But those of us who are lost, those who do not know the Lord, those who are personally enemies of the Lord and personal enemies of God, those who worship Satan, they will begin to experience the weeping and the grief forever and ever. Listen to what Jesus said. He said, in hell, their worm, their conscience never dies. The worm, the brain looks like a worm. He said their conscience never dies. And he says, and there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth forever. In hell, they're going to be in weeping and in mourning and in sorrow and in grief. But in heaven, you and I are going to experience joy forever and ever. And there's not going to be any weeping there. Because the day that Jesus wept, God himself, God, Emmanuel among us, wept so that you and I will experience joy forever. His wet face dried ours. His grief and sorrow gave us joy and rejoicing forever. Listen to what Isaiah says about Jesus, what he did. He said in Isaiah 53:4, this is what he says. Surely he hath borne our griefs and hath carried our sorrows. Surely he took away the grief from us. Now, grief is when you experience the loss of a loved one. There's a ripping away of the gut, of the spirit, a tearing, a crying, a loss. And so Isaiah said that he took that away from us. And then he says he took away our sorrows, the misfortune, the unsuccess, the losing of things. He took away our grief, and he took away our sorrow forever and ever. So blessed are they that mourn now, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are they that weep now, because they're getting ready to have joy forever and ever. So listen, let me give you a word of advice. Don't be so quick to have God judge our enemies. God already knows their portion. God already knows that the earth is all they have. If they live to be 90 years on this earth, this is all they're going to have. This is it. This is all they're going to have. They're not going to experience the everlasting joy that you and I are going to experience. So God is not in a rush to judge them, because he knows what they are facing forever. He already knows that weeping and gnashing of teeth is going to be their portion, but joy and everlasting rejoicing is going to be ours. So Peter says this in 1 Peter 5:7. He says, instead of worrying about it, he says, cast all your cares upon him, because he cares for you. Because he took away our grief, he took away our sorrow, he cares enough for us to take away the things that are heavy on us, the burdens, the grief, the sorrow. He says, so cast it all on him. He's like a beast of burden. He can carry it. Just put your heavy load on him. Tell him about it. Now, let's look at Revelation, and I want to show you how powerful your prayers and your tears are. Now, have you ever been in prayer and where things are going fine, things are going good in your life, and there's no need for sorrow, and there's no need for grief or whatever, but in your prayer time, the Spirit of God begin to cry and wail and travail in your spirit, where you're crying and you're groaning and you're rocking and you're travailing and giving birth in the spirit realm. And these things are being used and saved up by God to judge the world. Let me show you this real quick. In Revelation chapter 8, verse 3-5. Revelation chapter 8, verse 3-5. And it says, and another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer. And there was given unto him incense. That's another form of prayer. That he should offer it with the prayers of the saints upon the golden altar, which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense, which came from the prayers of the saints, ascended up before God out of the hand of the angel. And the angel took the censer that was filled it with fire from the altar, and cast it upon the earth. And when he cast it upon the earth, there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. That's how powerful your prayers are. That's how powerful your tears are, your supplication before God. And God's going to use those prayers and tears and supplications to judge the world. They're going to hear voices. They're going to see thunders. They're going to hear lightning. And they're going to see thundering. And the earth is going to quake because of the tears and prayers of the saints. This is why he telleth the angel to bottle thou up my tears. And so that's a law. The law is that there's not going to be any weeping in heaven. There's going to be joy forever.